Jennifer has an honours degree in science from Melbourne University. She then did a diploma of librarianship, and she was the first registrar of the Australian War Memorial, the first registrar of the Australian Maritime Museum. Then, because she was a bit bored, she studied tax law and worked at the tax office for a number of years, then in private practice, and now is a policy advisor to One Nation. And without any disrespect, it's my submission that she has added a huge amount of intellectual grunt to One Nation. Jennifer, you're welcome to come and speak to us.
I want to thank the Southland Church and Sarah and Gary for hosting this evening. I also want to thank every one of you for being here and giving me the opportunity as a Senate candidate for One Nation. In South Australia now, we have a Labor government, but they don't control the numbers in the upper house. They rely on two Greens members to pass legislation. Shortly, I expect we will have a federal Labor government, and they too will rely on the Greens to pass their legislation. I want to put out a warning now about the Greens holding the balance of power in Canberra, because they're going to exact a very high price from the Labor government, because they hold extreme socialist and some would say communist views about how our society should proceed. They see the traditional family and communities of faith as agents of oppression for women and children, and more recently for biological men who identify as women. Further, they know that the traditional family and religious communities stand in the way of the state, increasing its powers over our day-to-day lives. It's one of the reasons that the Greens want to remove funding from Christian schools and private schools in general. The Greens identify One Nation as their political enemy because we stand up for the traditional family and religious communities, and also financial responsibility. It's the reason the Greens recommend their voters put One Nation last when voting. The Liberals and Labor also do the same, which tells you how far the major parties have moved to the left. The Liberals and Labor won't be protecting religious freedom and traditional families, despite what Senator Farrell has told us, because he's in the minority. He's in the minority. In February this year, the Prime Minister wrote to the opposition leader and he offered him a deal. He said if Labor would support the religious discrimination bill, the Liberals would support the removal of Section 38(3) of the Sex Discrimination Act, in what Martin Iles described as nearly the end of Christian education in Australia. He said that because the deal would remove the right of Christian schools to have codes of conduct and a Christian culture. And that is where that legislation lies today. And it hasn't gone forward into the Senate because the Liberal government did not have the numbers and decided that the best way forward was to do nothing, which is what they've done. They failed to keep their promise to pass the Religious Freedom Bill, and worse, they've removed the rights of Christian schools to have a code of conduct and a Christian culture. So my view is you can't trust either of them. One Nation is opposed to the Greens' view of the world, but the Greens perpetuate the myth that One Nation's a party of racists who oppose immigration and refugees coming to Australia, which is not true. We support genuine refugees coming to Australia. We support immigration when it's in the national interest, when it can be successful for Australians and new migrants, and when it's socially cohesive. We do want to limit immigration numbers so that we can take the pressure off our currently overburdened health and education system, to reduce road congestion, to improve job opportunities and wages for Australians, and to improve housing accessibility and affordability. Within 12 days, we go to polling day, and the question is whether or not anybody can stop the Greens in the Senate. I would say that's up to you. The communities of faith in South Australia have the voting power to deny the Greens the power in the Senate. It's a matter now for you to decide. I want to say that I hope that you will consider a vote for me and for inevitably One Nation. Our policies are outlined in this brochure, which is available to everybody as they walk out if they would like. Of course, you can go online as well. I'm the leader of One Nation in South Australia. I'm also the mother of the One Nation state candidate elected less than 2 weeks ago to the Legislative Council in South Australia, and I'm the mother of 3 small children. I'm also a person whose life is guided by their faith, even when no one is looking. I say that because in my life I've seen people do one thing when people are looking and another when they're not. As Christopher said, we're a pro-life party, and our policy on late-term abortion is contained on the back of our policy brochure. I think really, until I get some questions, that's probably all I would like to say. In terms of our economy, we need a strong economy. And the reason we need a strong economy is it pays for the goods and services that we need. And actually, without a strong economy, we're starting to lose our freedoms. My hope is that we'll never find a situation again where people are asked to choose between their freedom of choice over their health and their livelihoods. And that's what's happened in South Australia. And it's happened elsewhere. It should never have happened. There was never the evidence that a vaccinated person would be any less threat to society than an unvaccinated person who took preventative measures. We are a party of pro-choice. That is, we believe that if you're properly informed, you should be able to make your choice to have a vaccination of one of these COVID vaccines. We thoroughly support that. What we don't support is you being coerced and not being given the right amount of information. These vaccines are becoming progressively less effective against the new strains, and still we're under mandates here in South Australia. And it's not getting any better, because very shortly there will be a bill that will be rubber stamped through the state government here. We can expect the same rubber stamping by the Labor government with the help of the Greens unless you vote for a viable party who can stand up. We have already 2 senators, and I expect with a 3rd that we could make that difference to keep the Greens out, and I ask for your support to do that. Thank you.